member of the panel could introduce themselves, where they are from, what they do, that would be great. And we're going to be working around in a sequence that will start with Robin, then Paul, then Mike, then Simon, then John. So Robin, then Paul, then Mike, then Simon, then John. So on with the first question to Robin, what strategies are being put in place or have been put in place when you feel like the business is going to reopen again, Robin?
Okay, hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Robert Rowlands. I was the CEO of Yo Sushi for 18 years. I sat on the board of Tortilla Marston's Middle East company, and today I'm on the board of Fuller's and Cafe Nero. But my full-time job is an operating partner with Trispam, where we have 5 restaurant chains we currently invest in, and we're hopefully acquiring the same again for the next 12 months. So we're quite bullish going forward. The strategies for the 2 businesses which I chair in the UK, which are Rosa Thai and Thunderbird, they're not rocket science. So we basically battened the hatches down hard in late March, early April, conserving cash, but making sure we looked after teams. So for me, communication was critically important from day one, and making sure the actual properties were going to be reopened, or they were 3 months later, which appears to be the case. The slight quirk on this is that Rosa Thai management team decided to keep half the restaurants open. So they've had an incredible success operating to go out of 10 of their 20 sites and generating some significant income, which has been a terrific counterbalance to the cash burn we've experienced in other businesses. Thunderbird, same thing, tiny business, only sort of about 4 or 5 sites. And we are really beholden to landlords and when they're going to reopen. But for me, it's key to conserve cash, look after the team, and then think about how we can open with a bang rather than the whimper.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for being with us today, Robin. On to Paul.
Yes, hello everyone. Paul Harbottle. I have been in the sector for many years, starting life on the board of Wetherspoon and then moving into late night with Atmosphere Bars and Clubs as their chief exec. And more recently, I am the group commercial director for EI Group, recently been taken over by Stonegate. The small business that I chair is a company called Docklands Restaurants and Bars and Elite Coffee. We are a franchisee for Starbucks and we run a few pubs with hotels above. And much like Robin, it was all about conserving cash and locking down as quickly as we possibly could. We have a vast number of hourly paid staff who were very receptive towards the generous job retention scheme and furlough pay that the government has put up. So they all very quickly ran off and are sunning themselves, I'm sure, whilst a small team of us were looking after the properties and ensuring that we conserve as much cash as we possibly can and take advantage of the various grants and government schemes that are out there to give ourselves enough liquidity to be able to open the doors again as soon as lockdown is released. We had an interesting scenario in Docklands. The majority of the business is based around the XL Exhibition Centre, and of course the Nightingale Hospital was opened there. So initially the fear of a hospital trading there for the next 18 months and completely scuppering any of our trade in the pubs around there turned into an opportunity because Tesco's have sublet the pub from us. That's given us an income stream, albeit that the Nightingale Hospital at the moment is actually mothballed. So it's amazing for me what comes out of these things as opportunities, and we grasp them, and what you need around you is people who can look out for those things and be a bit sort of tactical, as well as having that sort of strategic overview that says, we need to keep the business safe, we need to keep our employees safe, and we need to get ourselves ready for when the opportunity comes to open the doors.
Great, thank you very much for being with us, Paul. On to Mike.
Hello everybody, my name's Mike Smith. I'm non-exec chairman of Open Inns and Restaurants. The company was formed in 2007 and I was one of the original investors, and in 2009 got the short straw amongst the investors and became chairman. My background is actually in food service. So for just under 30 years prior to that, I was involved in a number of businesses, startups and corporate MD roles, culminating in 2000, set up with my longtime partner, William Baxter. We formed Baxter Smith, which merged in 2004 with Wilson Story Halliday and became Baxter Story, now known as WSH, which is the largest independent food service company. I think I'm right in saying that in the UK. Pre-COVID had a turnover just under £1 billion, I think. Regarding Oakman, Peter Borgenil heads up that business, be familiar to many people in the industry. Oakman has 27 pubs in the home counties, predominantly north of the M25. They're large outlets, 2,000 square foot net customer space, average turnover per site's about 35,000. Again, these are pre-COVID numbers, and the basis of our business is to be open for as long as possible. So from 8 in the morning right the way through till 1 the following morning, and reinvent ourselves throughout the day with various income streams. As with everybody else, you've heard it many times before, we were trading pretty well. We had a very good 2019, 7.5 like-for-likes. January, pretty good. February, holding well. And then March came along and bang, shut down. Oakman is a highly leveraged business, and you know, we're not sitting on the cash pile. And so we had to move very quickly in a number of directions. Obviously, we had to shut the businesses down. Furlough scheme, we had 1,000 employees. That was very helpful. And then beyond that, we have a debt stack which is segregated into senior debt with banks. We have secured debt with some private investors. We have corporate bonds with over 100 people taking part in that, and then the shareholder loans and others. So we had to visit that debt stack and sort matters out, all of which was done. As with others, C-bill discussions with banks, on and on. And we got ourselves to a position where we were comfortable we were going to survive and have enough cash to reopen. So our attention now is turning to the reopening, and some of you may have seen, we held a press day in one of our months well, it was Monday and Tuesday. We were trying to demonstrate how to safely open a large pub in a rural location with a large garden. And we've had a fantastic response to that. You know, it was picked up by Sky News, it was in Daily Mail yesterday, The Sun, The Star, ITV, so forth. And it's given us a lot of confidence that we've been able to demonstrate in our particular case, and it's not the same for vertical drinking pubs and others, but in our particular case, we are now pretty clearly seeing and demonstrating the way forward.
And like, for those that didn't see that article, would you mind just giving a little bit about, and briefly, kind of like, you know, what that looked like? So Oakman pubs are essentially, as I said, fairly large operations. And what we've decided to do is vertical drinking will go. 25% of the furniture will be removed, which enables us to spread the remaining furniture throughout the bar areas and the restaurant areas. We also have up to 100 covers outside in some of the sites. And so with a combination of screening, Perspex logo screening, which is portable, so we can configure the restaurant according to bookings, meet and greet, the sanitisation, and a customer journey, one-way systems. We were able to film and demonstrate how we would go through a service of an individual. So that would include the remote ordering via an app, how we have open kitchens so the staff could see the chefs wearing face shields and so forth. And similarly with the outdoor dining. And it's not rocket science, we're not doing anything that would be that anybody else wouldn't have thought of, but we just have put it all together in a package so people can
visualize it as much as anything else, because this is what it's about. It's I think safety and risk assessment will be inherent in all our businesses, but what won't be is customer confidence. So it's what we're trying to do is turn safety into a service so that people embrace what you're trying to do. And of course, it's not only risk assessments and training for our staff, but it's also giving confidence to the customers as well. And so giving them information and knowing what's expected of them. So there we go. I hope I've rambled on long enough there, Christian, but you've got the idea.
Thank you for that, Mike. On to Simon.
Hi there, my name's Simon Kay. I'm a non-exec director at Morso, which is a small restaurant business created a couple of years ago, operating a couple of sites in northwest London. I've recently switched from a role as MD to strategic advisor at a company called East Coast Concepts that operates the Victor's brand and neighbourhood brands up in the northwest and in Oxford. And I've recently joined a group of people with an outfit called All Together, who are just providing pro bono mentoring support to businesses. But the bulk of my time in senior roles was at a company called Entertain that operated Walkabout, sold in 2016 to Stonegate, and prior to that at Scottish Newcastle Retail. So that's a kind of very quick trot through the CV. Lots of the points that have already been raised I'll try to avoid reiterating, albeit we're in relatively smaller businesses than the likes of Oakman and the ones that Robin and Paul are involved in. But obviously cash was critical. I think, as with probably is the case with all of the members of the panel, we are really in the hands of the quality of the leaders in each of the businesses, and our role is one of providing a sounding board and some advice. And fortunately, in the case of Morso and East Coast, there are very proactive and energized leaders who have taken really positive steps, and in both cases feel as though that they're in the sort of the front of the cohort in managing this crisis. Obviously safeguarding cash and ensuring they got access to the support that's available from government was key. And I think going forward, just modelling what the cash burn or contribution is going to be from reopening is quite a delicate art at the moment to determine when is that point that one can reopen. In the case of Morso, they took the view that they didn't want to close. They operated immediately, actually from day one, a grocery business where they were selling flour and bread and items that people were finding were in scarce supply. Toilet rolls, they're now doing masks, as well as serving on a click and collect basis, using their own staff to do cycle-based deliveries. And that was in addition to the Deliveroo platform. So Morso were very proactive and actually generated something like 60% of their normal revenue from those activities in the site in Abbey Road, and continue to do so. And I think that really bodes well, because the community that they serve, and it is a suburban business that is in a highly residential area, really seems to have taken the business to their hearts for the support that they've given, and not only to the community but also to some local hospices doing work on a charitable basis. So that's been important. But then, aside from the opportunities to sort of keep the coffers topped up, it's just been important to keep the dialogue strong with employees, as has been mentioned, with customers, with the supply chain. That's been a full-time job, really, just ensuring that the supplies continue through to Morso, but also that the debt that is carried through this crisis is being managed in a proactive and positive way with the supply chain, who I have to say have all responded in a very positive way. obviously eyes turn now to reopening, even though it is quite some time away, probably the 4th of July. And I would, I hope that there will be a consensus that builds over the next few weeks, which great work by Brewdog, and as Mike has just talked about from Oatman Inns, where I think we need to move the narrative from stay safe at all costs to how to return to normal safely. And the videos that and the press coverage this weekend, I think, was really helpful from Oatman Inns. Obviously, they have great outdoor areas. They've got some big spaces. Certainly in our businesses, some of the restaurants are larger, and we will be able to operate at decent capacities. But utilising the outdoor spaces is also key. There are lots of things that those leaders are doing, but that gives you a flavour.
Great, thanks very much for that, Simon. On to John.
Yeah, thanks. I hope everyone's safe and well. My name's John Wright. I founded Exercise for Less, which is a chain of budget health clubs, in 2009. And in the next 10 years went from one site in Yorkshire to over 50 sites UK-wide, from Southend and Sea in Essex over to Swansea in Wales, all the way up to Dundee in Scotland. So over that 10 years of expansion, we did 6 private equity deals. And as we went towards the end of that 10 years, I took myself out of operations gradually and eventually moved to a pure non-exec position last year. I also sit on a board for a commercial property company. So should the conversation with the panel move on to landlords and how to deal with landlords, I can probably give quite a balanced view from both sides of the equation on that one. You know, that's probably going last on the panel. Everybody else has said lots of things, so I don't really want to talk
John,
about...
as the only fitness kind of like, you know, member of the panel, or official fitness member of the panel, could you give us some insight as to what you think the gyms of the future are going to look like? Yeah,
sure. So I think what the COVID has done is accelerated consumer trends, clearly, and you know what you've seen within the leisure, within health clubs, is you've seen this idea of convenience within society being accelerated. So if you go back 10 years ago within health clubs, everyone talked about a 10-minute drive time for a radius for your membership. Now 90% of our members live within a 1 mile radius. So, you know, people want convenience, that people want it on their doorstep. And what you've seen with COVID is people have been forced to exercise at home. And what you will see on the other side of COVID, I think, will be, you know, that home use will be here to stay. And because it's far more convenient training at home than going to the gym, simple as that. That said, you cannot recreate the atmosphere at home that you get in a health club. So I think what you'll see is you'll see a nuanced change within people's training patterns. So if you were going to the gym 3 times a week, you probably might go twice a week, but train at home once a week, or maybe at home twice a week and the gym once a week. And what you've seen is a huge acceleration of the digitalization of products within the health clubs. And that's had to happen pretty quickly in the downturn, whilst we can't open our clubs. And you've seen that across the industry, and Exercise for Less is no different. We've accelerated our plans and spend on those digital products, so people can access programs at home, classes at home, and it's pretty. The quality is not great in the industry at the minute because it's been rushed, but that will come, and I think you will see that embedded in health clubs in the future.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. Robin, coming on to you, and I had a question that I wanted to pose to the panel regarding the delivery side of things, in terms of whether you know, it actually makes money, or whether it's kind of like something just to kind of keep operations kind of ticking over. And obviously it was announced today about Caffè Nero going into the delivery side of things. What are your thoughts surrounding that?
Well, it depends on whether you've got the volume to support it. I think about all the different businesses which I'm involved with. In America, I've got big businesses on the East Coast, and they're on a certain rate. People in the Middle East on another rate, in the UK on another rate. You have to get a rate down to sub 25%, and you need to have decent volume to cover the cost of the packaging and production of the food. But Rose's is extraordinary. So 40% of their turnover has been delivery from day one. So, and I think the key is you've got to have a business that supplies a kind of food that is eminently transportable and desirable and niche. It has to be something a little bit extraordinary, I think, to survive and grow, because it relies on repeat business. But the terms are still not quite right, I think. As a downward pressure, if you're a large operator, you can demand less than 20%. Most operators weigh in between 25 and 30 and try and get down to 25. Every percentage point is important to try and create a business that actually is incremental add value on profit. So yes, you can make money, and I wouldn't do it unless you did make money. I think what is interesting though is, we didn't mention earlier on, is we've started seeing the rise of dark kitchens over the last 2 months to service people's desire for food that has it closer to their homes from value brands. I think that's also another business model that people have to get more used to. I think the Middle East is about 3 years ahead of us in the UK, as is New York on this. So I think dark kitchens will be another extension of the whole delivery aspect. But there is a place for people to eat out and socialise. I'm absolutely sure of it. And as soon as we get rid of this cursed virus, I think we're going to see a resurgence of the better operators that run full service. And delivery is not a panacea that's going to sort all your problems out. It's helpful, but it has to be very carefully weighed up in terms of its profit add.
Perfect. And Robin, just while I have you, I mean, obviously speaking to lots of clients over the last couple of weeks, there's lots of businesses looking at how they pivot. And franchise is something which is coming up from kind of a number of our clients at the moment as being kind of like, I don't know if it's the next delivery thing as people kind of think about how to pivot their businesses. What, as somebody who's successfully franchised a number of different businesses, what would you kind of, is there any pitfalls or any piece of advice that you give to entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, there's an ocean of pitfalls. I mean, you're basically getting married. So you better make sure you've got the right franchisee who's well-funded, shares your same values, has access to property that is going to be there for long term, and you have to control your brand with advice. It doesn't matter if it's a little QSR business or a great big full-service license. You have to be prepared to put money in to monitor it. And it's a great academic exercise. Say, oh, I'll franchise all my business and I'll still make a decent profit. The reality is it's plagued with the risk of a relationship, which needs to be a good one from day one. But good franchising, we had fantastic franchise partners with Yo, with 30 sites, with partners who all had 5 or more sites, but they were very demanding at times, and they did need support, and a lot of energy went into negotiating. And then, of course, if there's any bumps along the road, you can be sure that your franchise fees are the first ones to go, but while the franchisee tries to work out its own cash flow problems. So I think, franchising can work, but you have to be very careful about choice of partner and make sure you have a robust system and the controls in place.
And looking across the spectrum of businesses that you cover, other than delivery and franchise, which seem to be the main two at the moment, if people are watching or thinking about other ways that they can pivot, are there any other areas that you've seen executed successfully in the current crisis?
Well, the dark kitchen one is the one that sort of, it's an academic exercise, but we're looking at it and then with virtual brands, you can use your, these weighty kitchens to deliver food with a different offer, but you have to make absolutely sure it doesn't screw up your first offer. I think you need to go and turn on some of the other guys. There's 5 of us on the call here. They get fed up of my voice, so I'm sure they've got some good ideas.
No problem. Paul, coming on to you with an L&T question, which got sent into us yesterday. Obviously, kind of like on the leased and tenanted side of things, a lot of pubs have kind of like, their income's been much reduced. Do you think kind of pubcos are going to have to renegotiate moving forward?
I think we lost Paul. Question.
Oh, is his thing going?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. Mike, same question on to you. I know you guys do the managed side of things. Have you got any insight on the tenancy side of things?
Yeah. No, that's not really a question for us.
No problem. I did want to ask you on the employee wellness side of things. There's been a lot that's been kind of spoken about regarding employee wellness. When it comes to kind of senior management and kind of business owner wellness,
yeah,
how have you been supporting your guys?
That's a really good question because they themselves, spending their time considering the operational teams, and it can be at the expense of their own well-being. The way I operate with Peter Borge-Neal is that we have a scheduled 9:30 phone call every morning. Sometimes that phone call is 5 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours, and it's an open agenda either for Peter to update me, for me to say whatever I want to say for Peter. Very often it's me just listening to some of his ideas. But we've got a clear mandate, and that is that he needs to concentrate on managing the business and managing his own health. And then I can help him with liaison and communication to others. So that would be to our shareholder base, which, we've got shareholders ranging from investments of £10,000 right the way through to several million. There's 147 of them. Individually. Similarly, we've got quite a large board, non-exec directors, so we have a WhatsApp group. I will lead the communication with some of the other members of the board. And again, Peter will filter any communication with them either through the WhatsApp group or through me. And it's really, it's common with many people I've heard saying that they've actually been working longer hours in the shutdown than otherwise, because you're remodeling and you're liaising with landlords and suppliers. There's an endless amount of stuff, particularly in the early weeks. And one of the things that I've been doing with Peter is to make sure that he looks after his own health, and in turn his senior team, he's making sure that those guys aren't just breathing the business day in, day out, because it's been a very stressful time for everybody. I mean, we are now beginning, all of us, to see a way through. It doesn't mean to say, that everything's secure, but I think we're about, the really tough time is in front of us when we start reopening, because we're going to be faced with a whole panacea of challenges, which include nervous customers, nervous staff. Some of the trading numbers are going to be difficult. We're moving into new areas with landlords and your rents, and suddenly the deferred debt starts creeping up on you pretty quickly. So I think Peter and I are fairly clear that what we need for our own peace of mind, and for Peter's peace of mind and the team, is as and when we open, everybody needs to understand the terms of engagement from the government in terms of what is it that we're expected to do, what is it that we're doing about rental deferment. And obviously UK Hospitality and Kate are doing a lot on that, but I think once we've got clarity, then I think it's going to be a lot easier in terms of stress for the senior guys. At the moment, everybody's got an opinion, but that's all they've got.
Good answer. Thank you very much for that, Mike. Simon, coming on to you, there was a question which had come in yesterday regarding advice for startup restaurant brands in terms of how to fundraise in the crisis. What advice would you kind of give to them, Simon?
First of all, just let me comment on the points that Mike's just made. One of the things that I've witnessed in relation to reopening is, and we all participate in lots of WhatsApp groups and various forums, and we've seen operators each trying to come up with their own solutions. And for me, it feels really important that the consumer has almost an accreditation badge that they can look at that enables them to say, I'm now walking into a safe premise, somewhere that respects the safety protocols and is doing the right thing. Now, whether that's a kite mark or a 5 stars on the board, or some mechanism. And thankfully, Kate is working on some such accreditation system. In fact, she talked about it this morning in Propel. It will be flexible depending on the sector, but I think that's going to be really important for the consumer not to have to go through their own checklist of, is this operator doing all the right things, when there's kind of an accreditation system. So I think that will be good. In terms of coming back to the point that you raised on fundraising, I think it's very tough. More so, which set up a couple of years ago, did so initially with funding from friends and family, really, and from their own coffers, and taking out loans. It's a relatively small. It was a relatively small capital outlay by the standards of that which I've been used to in other parts of the sector. But then to move to the second site, we tried to crowd fund through Crowdcube, and we found that a very frustrating and exhausting process, which didn't succeed. Fortunately, we were then able to use some of the learning that we got from that to really access some friends, wider friends across the sector, on the back of having had a very successful first year with very strong consumer numbers. So that enabled us to convince, not 1,000 people, but 15 people that it was worth putting in, 5-figure sums that enabled us to open the second restaurant. But for guys who go into this to produce, to do a great hospitality experience with a food product that they love, to then devote their time to trying to convince individuals to put cash in, it's very distracting. So I wish people all the success, but talk to people like Robin, who he's sat there looking for passionate people with talent, who have great ideas that the consumer is likely to want to buy in buckets.
Yeah, just on the Crowdcube side of things, when you mentioned that obviously you found that quite a frustrating process, any hints or tips for people who are going through that at the moment, or anything that you would have done differently, or was it just not the right platform for you?
I don't know. I'm not sure whether we didn't do it as well as we could have done. Some people have been successful at raising money through crowdfunding, but for every success, I probably talked to 4 people who said, "Don't do it. We've tried. It's hard work, and it won't work." We ignored that advice and found for ourselves how difficult it was. I don't know. Perhaps we weren't mature enough. Perhaps we needed 3 or 4 sites and a bigger consumer platform, a larger bank of fans to make it successful. But there is a kind of pinch point. I think if you're needing to raise less than $500,000, and we were, in our case, we were looking for about 250 or 300. The support that we got from Crowdcube was minimal.
Right.
I think they take you more seriously when you're looking to raise over $500,000, and they'll throw more of their weight behind securing support. But it wasn't a great process for us.
Okay, understood. Thank you for that, Simon. John, just coming on to you, and as you want to grasp the nettle of the landlord question, there's obviously there will be quite a lot of MDs and CFOs who are kind of watching this. What advice would you give them in regards to negotiating with landlords currently?
Well, first thing, they've got to grasp the nettle straight off, and you've got to communicate with your landlords. There's nothing worse than just burying your head in the sand and ignoring any communication, because that's just not going to work. You've got to open up that communication, and you've got to be honest. You've got to be transparent about where you are and what you're doing, what the state of your business is. And I think what we're going to see now is a structural change, really, in terms of how landlords interact with their tenants, and it's got to move more to a partnership model. And you're starting to see that there's a clear move towards percentage of your rent, percentage of your turnover as rent. And if operators can move that cost to a variable cost from a fixed cost, that's nothing but a good thing. Clearly, there's going to be resistance from landlords to do that. But there is a change in terms of power base in that landlord-tenant relationship, And as we come out of COVID, there's going to be much more power with the tenants than they've ever had before.
Yep.
Clearly, from a landlord's point of view, a good site is a tenanted site. You do not want empty sites, and there is going to be many, many thousands of empty sites on the high street. So that power is changing, and tenants should understand that and realize that. But the key to it is to be transparent, show your landlord your numbers, and open up some communication. Landlords will not want empty units post-COVID because they will struggle very hard to let them. So be transparent, be communicative. That's my advice.
Excellent. And then the kind of question had come up in the Q&A just regarding your previous comment about the classes from home and that side of things, and just how you would kind of imagine monetizing that, John.
So first and foremost, those digital concepts that are being put out there now are, in the short term, they're a strategy for staying in touch with our membership base. So there's no way you'd monetize those in the short term at all. It's a strategy for maintaining relationships so that when we do reopen, those members are pretty warm to coming back. But as we move into post-COVID, then clearly, operators will want to monetize those digital products that are available. And how that happens is yet to be seen. I suspect we may well move to, in effect, an add-on membership. So you have a base membership where you pay a set fee for your bricks and mortar membership, and then there's an add-on for different various digital products that you can download into your home, or a variation of the two. So it's yet to be, it'll be interesting to see how it develops, but I suspect that's how it will develop into an add-on.
In the longer term. Got you. That's great. Robin, with Trispan obviously looking at doing investments in the European side of things, there's a question which had come in from the panel in terms of any specific countries that you think we should be taking a lead from in Europe in terms of coming out of this.
Well, in a private equity house, you have a bunch of partners and a whole heap of analysts. So we've got a whole lot of interns as well, and we've set them the task of monitoring Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, Spain, Italy, and the Nordics, trying to learn lessons from them. But so at the moment, so we're tracking Austria and Germany and Norway as key indicators of how you can get out of this the fastest. But again, it is interesting because I can see a question from one of my old guys from Yo Sushi about America. I mean, America's also got some good practice and some horrific practice going on as well. So I wouldn't look to America for any universal solutions, but I'd look at Austria and Germany if you want to keep a track on those two.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on the Swedish model?
Well, I mean, their starting point is different to the UK, so how do you compare? I mean, they can put different policies in place because they lock down faster. Frankly, we can get to politics if you like, but this government let the cat out of the bag. 1 month too late, and Sweden, move faster. So.
Yeah, I suppose the question is more so about business performance. If people are actually comfortable to go into those units and actually stand in pubs and bars and drink and all of that side of things.
But I think it goes back to Mike's point, and I think it was Mike or Simons, but unless the government move from a position of it's not my problem to actually saying actually it's now safe to go out, there is a perception that it's still unsafe. So I think Sweden didn't have that problem because the government were always more upbeat and positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a last quick question for you regarding support for senior management, because you obviously cover a range of different businesses and different business sizes. How, and from a mental health perspective for senior management and business owners, what's your advice, Robin?
Well, I put myself in their place. I was a CEO for many, many years and an ops director and Simon. I used to work at Scottish Newcastle. It's a lonely job because you're a leader where a lot of people are looking to you for their livelihood and some support and advice. So our CEOs, I'm privileged to work with some really talented guys, both in the UK and America, but they all need to have somebody to talk to. And the fact Mike's talking to Peter on a daily basis is exemplary. I'm probably not quite as good as that, but certainly every other day I speak to Paul and Gavin. And then the FDs also need quite a bit of support because they're the ones under the cosh in terms of the forecasting, which we alluded to, because they are under huge pressure to make sure they are not misleading the boards, all their audits, all their banks. They're the two people I'm focusing on the most. But now I'm going to focus quite a bit of attention on the operations directors as they go back into reopening, because I think they're the three pillars are critically important support. And then you could probably go on to HR and marketing as additional folk. But a good chairman, I think, needs to be, positive and upbeat, but realistic, but hugely supportive to the teams who've gone through completely uncharted territory. None of us have any idea how this is going to turn out. All we can do is actually point them to what's good practice and support the good initiatives that they take and help them through, avoiding making some silly mistakes. I saw one question on your list about saving cash. I just want to be clear, what I was saying about cash flow is about conserving cash. A good business conserves cash when it can and spends it when it needs to. I think we are in a position where we're now going to start investing again and putting our money back into the businesses to make sure they do open properly. But I don't want to misunderstand. And the UK, we should all remember, is blessed with this furlough. Paid furlough of this magnitude is extraordinary. It is. There's nowhere else in the world doing this. This has allowed us 3 months to catch our breath before we go again. This is not the case in America with 35 million people unemployed. They have taken a very different approach. So I think we're blessed, hopefully, for stress, but it would be compounded by the fact that we haven't created mass unemployment in the UK. That's not a political point. I just think that it should be relatively easy to get people to go back to work. They should. Let's hope they will go back to work.
Great. Coming on to Mike, just with an extension of that question, there was something that came in the Q&A regarding kind of like, the next wave of redundancies which may come in when kind of furlough ends, and what businesses can do to avoid this kind of happening. Now, we did a survey a couple of weeks ago at Core Recruitment, and that looked at 46,000 people across the sector who earn up to 60,000 a year, and around about 20% of those were thinking about not going back to their current hospitality employer or hospitality or leisure employer after COVID ends. Do you think this will all cancel each other out, Mike, or what kind of steps are you taking?
Well, I think we have to be realistic. There's a couple of things. Firstly, I think businesses are going to need less people going forward across the board. That's not an opening point. And secondly, this will apply to everybody. We've all had 8 to 10 weeks to reflect on our own personal work-life balance, our own motivations in life and what we're doing. And that's whether you're a chef, a GM, an FD, a CEO, or even a chairman for that matter. So there has been a period of reflection. In terms of the new normal coming back, I think Oakman's position will be to embrace a new beginning. And this is how we'll be presenting it. I think on one of your webinars that I saw recently, I think it was Chris Galvin said, the approach is to have, as if you've been given the keys to a new business, keys to a new restaurant, and we're starting again. And I really like the idea of that. And a lot of people, are relatively competitive in their outlook, and they'll want to embrace the challenges that are presented to us. So we've got, let's say we're working towards optimistically a 4th of July, that we may be able to get some of our pub gardens open. So, we've got a matter of 5 to 6 weeks to really put a foot down on communicating with staff, giving them clarity on what we're asking them to do. Those that have reflected that it may not be for them going forward, and legitimately just this morning, I was speaking to one of our general managers who's got young children. She's genuinely frightened about going back to work, genuinely. And so we need to really spend the next 5 to 6 weeks giving clarity, and then those people have got real information to make career decisions on. There's opportunities and there's threats on the other side. One of the benefits of all this is that there will be a talent pool available to us going forward, which hasn't necessarily been there in the past, because I would assume there's going to be less positions and the same number of people. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, Krishna. In terms of the direct day-to-day communication with the staff, obviously the HR teams, Peter and King, the operational guys, have got all that in front of them and have got some very clear thoughts about what the guys should be doing.
Great, thank you very much for that, Mike. Simon, coming on to you with, I guess, the technology question regarding any specific things that you've been using to communicate with your teams, or anything that you've been using to get closer to your customer base.
I've listened to lots of different ways in which people are doing that. I mean, in East Coast, there's just been a very strong routine that's been based on a Monday, the publication of tools and information and access to solutions. On Wednesday, something that is more social, that involves perhaps some videos or people sharing talents. And then on a Friday, a webinar that's hosted by the senior team. And that's just provided structure and reassurance to people. But I envy the people that were already up and running with the likes of Yapster, that allows kind of, I don't know, more regular, informal, chatty dialogue. But certainly the feedback that we've had from the teams in the two businesses that I work alongside has been one that makes you feel that retention will be easier going forward. And I'm very aware of the fact that some businesses, the opposite will be the case. So the way in which leaders have behaved and the opportunity that they've taken to engage with people on a personal level, with honest communication, that explains the position as they see it, that shares the vulnerabilities of themselves and their businesses, I think will be a real accelerator for some people to say, I really want to stay in this business. And there'll be other businesses that haven't grasped that opportunity and where they will see fallout. I think the other small point, a counter really to the point that Mike just made about the fact that there will be a larger pool of people to draw on, is the slightly worrying suggestion that a number of EU nationals will return home, and many of those people are the backbone of these businesses, and I think some will return home and not come back. There may be other people who are available to replace them, but I think that's a bit of a concern, because there are many unsung heroes from the EU who who are key to the businesses.
That's great. Thank you very, very much for that, Simon. John, I'm just coming back to you. I was going to ask you the question about the kind of like existing government support, and we've heard quite a lot about how that's been applied in hospitality, but I was going to ask you about how it's gone down within the leisure industry. And there was a question which had come in from Giles regarding inflation, and if you think what will happen with that post-lockdown, and if you've got that in your business modelling. Sorry, that's a bit of a double header, but if you can give us your thoughts on that, that would be great. Mute.
So the space bar wasn't working there. Well, just first of all, to follow up on Simon's point, it's not just about how operators, businesses have treated their staff throughout this, but as how have brands treated their customers as well. And there's going to be winners and losers out of this, and brands that have been seen to do the right thing will come out of it better. I mean, when we went into lockdown, without question, we simply just stopped taking payments from all our members, and that was definitely the right thing to do. It wasn't even debated with Exercise for Less. I can't say that happened across all brands, but just to follow up on Simon's point. And sorry, what was the question again?
Regarding the effect of the government scheme within the leisure sector.
So, I mean, I'm sure I was like most businessmen when I sat listening to the Chancellor of the Exchequer announce that. I just let out a huge sigh of relief. It was a monumental moment for a government, sort of a relatively very right-wing conservative government, to announce something of that nature, and I wasn't expecting it. And quite frankly, I was quite amazed at the time, and it's been fantastic for us. We furloughed 95% of our staff, and that's been a significant, obviously a significant saving for us. The other things the government have done, I mean, we've not accessed any borrowing. Fortunately, we've done a fundraise just at the end of last year, so we were quite fortunate in that regard. But the moratorium on landlords, that was very beneficial as well. I mean, sorry to come back to landlords again, but there's clearly a wide spectrum of landlords in the UK with different levels of sophistication, from institutional landlords right down to single people with pension pots, and there was a very wide mix of responses to the COVID, so in effect when everyone stopped paying rent, from the different landlords. And it's all very well saying the government saying you can't throw people out their sites, but all of a sudden stat demands were coming, the threat of winding up orders were coming, and the government's intervention in stopping that was, again, it saved our industry, to be honest, because otherwise there would have been many operators going out of business.
Right, thank you very much for that, John, much appreciated. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work around the panel one last time. I think we're going to run a little bit over, but I'll pose one last question so we can finish off what's on the Q&A, and then if you could also give any final thoughts and pieces of advice, that would be great. So Robin, back to you, and there's a question which came in saying, as investors, are you looking at investment opportunities outside the sectors you normally invest in, and what types of investments are you looking at?
Well, we have two funds. One is a agnostic fund that generally is in healthcare. Skin is one company in the UK we invested in. The other is a dental company in America, and they've done a software company. So that's a different fund, but it's part of Trispan. The restaurant fund is really food and beverage. And it should ideally be full unit for investments, but we have looked at, we will continue to look at extensions, everything from delivery to production. But there's 8 of us are on the investment committee, and we have to have a firm conviction that the business is viable and has long-term growth potential, and we've got our finger on the pulse. So we are much more comfortable, I think, with our four-wall, but it's restaurants, bars, and it's predominantly food. So hotels, that would not be the primary income. So this dedicated fund, which is a sizable fund, was always targeted, and remains so at this stage.
Great. And any final thoughts, Robin?
Well, no, except I think we're 2/3 through an unusual space of time. So I think if people can finish their forecasting and get down to practicalities of giving clear direction to their teams and communicate effectively with guests, I think that's time well spent over the next 4 weeks. And I think in July, I think people should continue to be open and share best practice and trading numbers, which we've always been pretty good at informally, but I think everyone's learning. And I would just implore people to not be closed to sharing good and bad experiences in the first 3 or 4 months post-opening. We want this whole sector to survive. And although there's going to be some failures, it'd be good to learn from other people's experiences.
And if you were talking in percentage terms, how sure are you about the 4th of July being the opening date?
Well, I think it will be for some. I think some people will choose to have their own good commercial reasons to delay and watch other people for a matter of weeks. I'm sure the 4th of July will be PR'd massively by the government because it's in their interest to do so. But until we understand what the furlough scheme looks like, frankly, because we don't know the terms from the end of July, and everyone seems to blithely think it's going to continue in its existing format, it will not. I'm sure from the 1st of August it'll be different. I think people will choose to open when it's appropriate for their business. But I think most will give it a good go in the month of July.
Great. Thank you very much for being with us today, Robin. Much appreciated.
Pleasure and good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Mike, on to you. And the question that I was going to ask was around supply chain and how you guys are gearing back up your supply chain. And also, do you think there's going to be a switch to people buying more British than international?
Well, taking the first part of your question first, the supply chain is as important a relationship for us as it is for the shareholders, the staff, the customers, and so forth. And absolutely, when we were forced to shut down, we had sold just as an opening, £3 million worth of food and beverage that we hadn't paid for, and we therefore needed to have a detailed conversation with a lot of suppliers, and we were absolutely amazed at the level of support, almost across the board, that we were given. Obviously, there's local suppliers, printers and delivery guys and what have you, and right through to the larger breweries and the fruit and veg and butcher guys who are you're running into hundreds of thousands of pounds. But almost without exception, those guys were supportive of us, and we will be remembering that. And we have agreed a way forward with all of them. Not the same. Some have been paid off completely. Some we have payment plans with, and others we have innovative ways of looking at it. But we will remember that, and we will enhance those relationships going forward. With regard to buying more British, you know, this has been a question that I've been asked over 20, 25 years in food service, where you're local and so on and so forth. You know, we do have an Italian element to our business. We are pizza pasta, and we're looking for authenticity within that food offer. So we are going to do what's right, and if it's right and ethical and commercially sensible to buy more British or more local, we will. But similarly, I don't see us stopping serving Spanish beers or Italian olive oil. So that's our position on suppliers.
Great. And any final thoughts, Mike?
Well, I'd like to pick up on what Robin has said. I think, you know, we have to draw positives from all of this, and you know, there's been a lot of challenges for this business. I don't know those that saw Luke Johnson's sort of love letter to the industry. I think it was described it. I actually thought it was excellent, and you know, he was describing the various challenges, whether it's deferred debt, whether it's reduced occupancy, either through the number of covers we can serve or people's reluctance to come along. We touched on this earlier, the fact that people are now thinking differently and they might want to do more from home. And, you know, moreover, we're in going into one of the deepest recessions ever.
Yeah.
So think positively with that as a backdrop. And I do, and we should. And here's some things that should give us encouragement. We've touched on the relationship between landlords, and that will change forever and for the better. I think there's a genuine opportunity for the government finally to see sense on VAT. Whether that is zero rated on food or a reduced rate of VAT, you know, there's arguments of which one might be preferable. But I'd like the government to really model VAT. I think I'm right in saying, is it Denmark and Slovakia, the only other two countries in Europe that don't have some form of VAT assistance for the hospitality industry? But in our terms, I mean, simply put, we take £1 million a week gross. 20% of that is on VAT. So 10% cut on VAT makes Oatman £5 million more profitable overnight. Now, what are we going to do with that money? We're going to reinvest it. We're going to employ people. We're going to make sure we're COVID safe and so on and so forth. So I think that's a real opportunity. And out of this, the lobbying arm of our industry has been pretty patchy over the years. You know, we've had it's been fractured actually. There's been all sorts of bodies, HCIMA and British Hospitality Association, this and that and that. But UK hospitality has got some real traction now. You know, lots of strong voices coming together behind Kate. And I think going forward, our industry is going to have far more respect than it's had in the past. Respect in terms of what we do, respect in terms of our importance to the UK economy, and in terms of our importance to the well-being of the country as a whole. I also think that you know, the fact that we're not going to be able to travel as much gives us a real opportunity. The staycations, and to, you know, UK hospitality business have got an opportunity now to show what we can do. So there we are. There are my closing thoughts. The final thing to say is it's become apparent to me that some people are better in the crisis than others, and you know, people have got long memories, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens on the other side.
Almost sounded sinister. Thank you very much for that, Mike. That's much appreciated. Now,
It wasn't meant to be sinister, I'm sure.
Should be stroking a white cat there, Mike. Flipping heck. What was I going to say? Coming on to Simon. Simon, there was a question that had come in to the Q&A regarding spending habits post COVID-19, in terms of kind of like, do you think people will be more economic, or do you think that they will be looking for luxury spend or treat purchases? And then your final thoughts would be great. Thank you very much.
Look, there are always going to be some people who want to access luxury and treat themselves, and you know, we thrive on the fact that people want some escapism, and you know, the march towards premium over commodity has definitely been with us for over a decade. However, I do think that talk of recession or depression, people having burnt whatever savings or cash resources they've got, high unemployment, is just bound to move the psyche towards value for money and affordability. And therefore, I think people are going to be, you know, there's evidence from the States, and Robin will be able to talk about it, without just reading about it, where people have looked to put a surcharge on for, you know, some of the additional costs, and consumers have been very, very vocal in saying, you know, we're just not happy with that, and they've had to back down. So I definitely think that people need to look very carefully at their pricing strategies. And you know, one of the keys to me seems to be capacity management. Clearly, with fewer tables and fewer covers, there's going to be a need. You know, we might be at 50 or 60% capacity, depending on whether it's 1 meter, 2 meters, or no meters. There's likely to be a reduction in capacity. Really, that puts pressure on trying to get more occupation of the space during the off-peak periods. And I think that's, you know, value for money, however you want to pitch it, promotional activity that's designed to secure greater occupation during the off-peak periods is going to be one of the tricks that the better players will participate in. In terms of wider thoughts, I share Mike's optimism really about the leaders that we have, and the ingenuity that has been evident throughout this whole process of people looking for solutions. Some of it's been a bit of a phony war, but it's largely been an example of people's appetite to re-engineer their businesses to make them successful. I applaud you, Krishnan, for what you've done in giving a voice to lots of people, and along with Propel and Montgomery Group and a variety of others that have given a platform. I just think it's been a fascinating period to get an insight into the views of some very able and senior leaders across our business, from businesses large and small. And I'm very confident in their ability to be positive, look for solutions, overcome the obstacles, find the support, and ensure that in 12 months' time, there's lots of reflection, but reflection on the back of a business that is you know, healthy again. I'll leave it at that.
Perfect, Simon. That's great. Thank you very much for being with us today. Much appreciated.
Okay, pleasure.
And John, coming back to you for the big finale, we are there's lots of people have been throwing around letters when it comes to kind of like, you know, COVID-19 and the recovery, whether it's a V shape or a W shape or an L shape. I mean, L shape sounds pretty horrendous, but are there? What do you think it's going to look like coming out of this? And then your final thoughts.
Well, I'm not an economist, so it's probably not the best question for me. But clearly, we would hope that it's going to be a V-shaped. I'm not convinced. I mean, I think we're heading into a pretty deep recession, so I think it's going to take us some time to recover from this. I think it's going to depend what unemployment looks like when we come out the other side. Clearly, furloughing has put a dent in that, but I think it's just too early to say. So it's a difficult question. Just coming back to what Mike was talking about, VAT, the other thing that does need reform, and I think this is the perfect opportunity, is rates. And you know, whilst we're all on a rates holiday, we're going to come out the other side, and the government would be remiss not to reform rates. It's a perfect opportunity for it. And I suppose, you know, talking about opportunity in terms of my closing remarks, you know, never waste a good crisis is what I would say. And I think, you know, when companies, businesses come out the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of opportunity because unfortunately there will be businesses that go. So there will be less supply than there was before. That's just a fact of life, as sad as it is. But there will be massive opportunity for the businesses that do survive. Opportunity to renegotiate rents, opportunity to renegotiate with your suppliers, opportunity to tweak your business model in terms of what you do and cut some costs there and be more effective in how you do things. So, you know, clearly this has been a horrendous time for everybody. But let's look on the bright side. There will definitely be opportunity coming out of this, and that's what we must focus on, I believe.
Excellent, John. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. Much appreciated. So it's just left to me to say thank you very much for the panel, for all being with us today, and my colleague Stuart for organising the IT for us. Thank you very much, Stuart. As I said at the start of the webinar, we are going to be doing a company webinar with Extreme at 3 o'clock. So if you don't have the link for that, then please drop me an email and then I'll be happy to attach it. But I think there's some very good and wise statements there. So I'll definitely be watching this back again myself later as well. So thank you all very much for taking the time to dial in. Much appreciated. Bye now.
Thanks all.